muted, aren't I? There we are. Now I'm not muted. I know. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? So tired. How much sleep did I get? Not much. Not much, I'll be honest. I think let's see, I went to sleep at 11 probably. I had to do recordings. Oh, thank you for the biddies. You are at 10 stickers because you got an extra one yesterday. Why is there another ad break coming up? Oh, I don't like that. I'll have to think about that if we can fix that. Anyways. One second. So I went to sleep at 11. 11, 12, 1, 2. So 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. I might have gotten 4.5 hours of sleep. Yeah. So the 10 stickers were used to get a full stream of main dress, and it'll also be used to show off the can corner. Yes. Yes, that's what it was. So until I show off the can corner, I'll be leaving them up. How dare I take away your ads? What do you mean? I would never want you to have ads. Yoink. Why are the mods in a cage? Because they're bad voidlings. Why not? Oh, that's crazy. Someone just gifted a sub to Ocean. Who would ever do that? Okay, so when you're so annoying. Alright, we have to figure out what we're gonna do today. I could do Minecraft, but I think I might be too tired for that. We could do Crimes and Clear. I still haven't gotten the second. What's it called? Oh, my brain is so far gone right now. I haven't seen my family for months. You don't need to see your family. It's okay. I'm alive. My brain is just not here right now. If you only got 4.5 hours sleep, you should end stream early and get some extra sleep. Unfortunately, that's not how life works. Hey, thank you for the bets. Unfortunately, right after this, I have to immediately go to work. So, I will be working. Well, I guess technically. Then what I will be doing is getting my computer ready, doing some work before I go into the office, taking a shower while I do work. Then I get on my computer and I do my work. Oh, is that the new Krog? Rookie, have you seen the... No, it's not that new Krog. That's your emotes. I like your emotes, but they look a lot like the new... Have you seen the new Krog VTuber? They seem very cool. Rookie, I don't think I've ever seen your model before. Oh, look at it. Look at your model. I like your model. Very cute. Yes, the new Croc VTuber. It was part of so V Shoujo's Beast drop, but you know, now that American V Shoujo is dead, they decided to go live on their own or go on their own. But they're staying together, which is nice. I'm just so glad that, you know, they're able to come back together. Oh, thank you so much for the Wadim. Okay, we're gonna go through all of our little check-ins here real quick and our things. I'm gonna say good morning to everybody. Be patient while I do this, okay? Y'all, we completed 4,700 followers yesterday night. We have 4,700 followers. What the heck? 5,000 needs a celebration. We're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do for 5,000. Good morning, Silverfang. Thank you for getting first. Good morning, Spooky Cats. Thank you for second. Good morning. We're not eating a lime. Good morning. A lime is not good enough for a celebration. I know it's funny, but like, that's like 3 seconds of celebration. Good morning, Sully, and thank you for getting third. You're going back to sleep. Oh, okay, Ocean. Go back to sleep. Mwah. 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 Good morning, Nimbus. Good morning, Olivia. Good morning, Stellar, Jazzy, and Spooky Cats. Good morning, Rookies Rebellion, Void, and Necro Ninja. I am so already planning that. I have one interested party. Good morning to Lissima and Ariana and Kira. Good morning, Pink and Ziggy and Chicken Wet. Good morning, Eli and Ocean and Vizure. Good morning, Tiny Tay and Momu Mia. Morning, Poisonous. Poison. Poisony, poison, poison. Good morning, Cindere and Sakona and Anya and Pixie. Good morning, Dea, Aria, and Bellatrix. I did have a waffle this morning. Good morning, Julia, Keeper of Fate. Lachlan. Good morning, Care Liar. Good morning, Kiana, Kitty Goth, and Asher. Good morning, Tasha, Cece, and Little Rain. Good morning, Goblin King, Roxanne, and I'm Mana. Good morning, Dorian, Pan. Hi, Pan. Did you see your art in the art? Good morning, Nixie, and Vaslong, and Xenix. Good morning, Allah. Just got home from work. That'll be up again in 3 hours for work again. What do you mean you just got home from work and you have to be up in 3 hours? Well, folks, that's not sustainable. What is your work doing to you? Hope you're doing okay. Good morning, Meow Kitty Gun, Jelly Kitch. Thank you for the headbats, Rookie. Nada. Spooky, thank you for the biddies. Onyx the Shadow, good morning. Good morning, Little Mouse. Good morning. Sinful. Good morning, Augustes. Good morning, Shadowy. Good morning, Pinky. Good morning, Amy and Elliptical. Good morning, Katamia. Kashi's wife, Sarah. And Melandanske? Mailed. Good morning, Aria. Iguana. No, Iguni. Enrica. And good morning, Calypsy. And Calypsy, I think your art's in there as well. I just put your art in there. I put at least one art for every person who sent me fan art. Now, Naptime has made a lot of edits, so I only put like 2 of theirs in there. Because Naptime puts so many edits. We need more fun. It's okay. We'll take our time. We'll get there eventually, I promise. Wolfos, I'm so sorry. I hope you get your sleep, okay? That's ridiculous that you have to immediately go back to work. Good luck. Sleep well. So everybody, we're gonna do a horror game tonight. We're gonna see if we can keep Wolfos up until they need to go back to work. I'm just kidding. I would never. Oh, good morning, Beamy. How you doing, Beamy? How's that partner push going? No, there are stick people even in there. You make a cute enough stick person, I'll 100% put it in the fan art. I'm kidding, we're not doing horror. I'm not doing horror, it's too early for horror. Horror is only for Saturdays. I need something to do. What do I want to do? Too many games out there. I kind of wish we could replay Dispatch, but I already know Dispatch. Thank you for the tier 1. Really appreciate it, Kitty Agoff. Should I just call you Kitty? Suppose I should ask people. I wish you could, like, put nicknames on people and make my life so much easier. You have a cute game. What's the game? You should look into Hello, Good Boy. Hello, Good Boy. Hello, good boy. Excuse me. Hey, yo. What the heck? Adorable. No, my category is supposed to be ASMR. Is it not ASMR? Oh, damn it. I'm sorry. I swear, this thing is so stupid sometimes. I'll put in that one category. And it immediately is like, no, we decided that you're doing just chatting today. Yeah, I can definitely see myself playing that at some point. Is this seat taken? That sounds cute. What is that? Is this seat taken doesn't become a horror game halfway through, does it? Oh, what is this? Tiny bookshop. Leave everything behind and open a tiny bookshop. Power. Hi, Nixie. Oh, look at your little legs. Devil level. Devil level. Oh, hey, look, free game. Hey, Chad, there's a free game. It's called One Gun Guy. If you go on right now, you can get it for free. On Steam. One Gun Guy. And now I have it. Oh, did Epic Games give away a lot of free games? Let me take a look. What's your question, Beamy? Oh, Epic needs an update. That's no fun. What's up, Beamy? Ask me a question right now. Hogwarts Legacy. Ooh. I guess Rowling gets no money out of that, do they? Will you ever partner Bush? I don't really need to. I have decided I'm not really doing a partner push. Eventually I'll hit partner. Yeah. I have a thing against J.K. Rowling. That's why I would never play a game where she gets money off of it. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm like, I think I could, few days away from partner. I just need to wait for the days. It wasn't going to do a push. You play games on a rage bait? Yes. J.K. Rowling is a bad person. Actually, I can tell you right now, we are. Well, see, it's also a thing of I want to eventually maybe do coaching for people. And if I do coaching, I need to prove that that I have what it takes. And so being able to say Gene made it to partner without any pushing is very, very beneficial for that. Yeah, I think it's going to be about 6 days before we hit the partner numbers. And then I should have the button to apply. Devil level. Oh, let me take a look. Is devil level the one where it's just like the level's trying to kill you? Oh, do you mean level devil? Or what's devil in RPG? I have played level devil, but I've not played devil level. Ravenous devils. I had fun just talking. Okay. Hear me out, y'all. Hear me out, y'all. I don't want to set the world on fire. No, but have y'all seen that new multiplayer game, Arc something? Have y'all seen that? Oh, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Menagerie. Creators, yeah. Hey, Solene, please, let's stop talking about it. This is a good vibe space right now. While I do agree, this is not the space for this. Thank you. Anyways, so content creation in general and streaming. I'm doing free coaching right now for a few people. And one of the things that I am coaching on is oh yeah, I'm just reviewing people's streams and stuff. And it's going pretty well. Hypothetically, but right now I am fully booked up. Okay. But yeah, y'all are good. I appreciate all of you. Let's see, said. It is free. Yeah. Yeah. And some people need a lot less, like, coaching than other people. I've been going through some of them now, and a lot of people have good base, but just really haven't learned how to, interact with people right. You know, kind of expanding off of people's concepts and all that, like, stuff. For instance, a lot of people just have conversations with people when you're streaming. Start with, you never really stop and talk to one individual person because there's a 6-second delay minimum talking between me and you. And I have to wait for you to have any idea of what you want to say. And who knows how long that's going to take. I mean, I might go, hey, what's your favorite color? You're like, I don't know. What is my favorite color? Let me look around my room real quick. Oh, I have a lot of red things. It might be red. I think red's my favorite color because I have so many red things you type out. And then you hit enter. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, oh, red. Why do you like red? And then you have to think about it. And you have to type about red. And as I sit here going, mm-hmm. And it's the thing that so many VTubers do and streamers do. Thank you for the headbands. Exactly. And if I ask questions, if I go, hey y'all, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is pink. Why is it pink? I don't know, honestly. I like pink, I think, because it has that weird masculine vibe, but not masculine vibe. Like, I'm growing up my entire life, there's always these cultures that are like, yeah, this culture thinks pink is super masculine. And it's also a thing of like, I think because it isn't seen masculine in the States, that I like wearing it even more. And because then it's just like a thing that no other dudes aren't going to be wearing. And there's so many cool guy clothes that are pink that nobody's wearing, so I feel even more original. Mm-hmm. And see, do you see that when I say that and I talk like this, Beamy, you wanted to respond to that. You wanted to continue off what I was saying. Pink has the softness that I enjoy. It's like, yeah, I agree. It has a really nice softness. I mean, even from like the texture to everything else. And then other people aren't going to have that same impulse to talk because they're going to want to talk off of what I'm going off of. And you just like pink, it's perfect. It's a natural way that people interact and talk with each other. And boom, there's Arya wanting to talk more about it. And there's another. And this is why my engagement's always good and what people are jealous of. Where people are always like, Gene, your engagement's so great. Why is your engagement so great? It is honestly a way of talking. Because when you ask one-on-one questions, you shut off everybody else. But when you do bigger statements and more conversational topics, you make it open for everyone. And that allows good engagement and retention. Boom. Actually, historically, pink was seen as men. Look at that. All right. I guess I can do that a little southern. See, look at, and they got all these nerds. Look at all these nerds. I love you, nerds. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Y'all the best. Y'all absolutely the best. Y'all prove my point, and y'all do it so well. Y'all, I love streaming. I love it so very, very much. Ain't not a single thing I enjoy more. All right. And Beamy, that's also why when I come by your streams, I see you hitting some good numbers because I think you got a good foundation as well. Exactly, Nixie. Exactly. All right. You just have, sometimes you gotta make a conscious effort of it. You know what I really want to do? I want to say screw ASMR and go play Metal Gear because I was having such fun with it, but I know I ain't got the time for that. Nor do I have the vibes for that. So maybe we'll do Slime Ranch. I still haven't picked. I'm just enjoying talking. You enjoy changing my heels through my legs. I want to get one of those. Yo, I want to get one of those. You ever seen those pressurized like leg cuffs that you can put on your legs and they just go and they squeeze? Once I gotta meet myself. Oops. I gotta fix this real quick. Give me a second. Oh, man. There it is. Dates updated. It has been 161 days since I began streaming. Oh, your messages weren't sending, baby? Oh, no. Sometimes that happens. But I'm glad this ended now. 161 days since I became very committed to streaming. And during that time, I realized something. Streaming every single day does not help your growth. It most certainly do not. I'd done streaming earlier before that, Beamy. I'd done FlashTube and then I'd done other streaming, but it wasn't until July 7th, 777, that I came back and really started committing myself to the way I wanted to stream and the person I wanted to be. And now, my streams are going a lot better. I'm having a lot more fun. Stuff's like, yeah. Oh, some of you don't know the term FlashTube. FlashTubing is more of a joke among VTubers. Because VTubing stands for virtual tuber. FlashTube. FlashTubing is, not being virtual. I came back when you needed me most. But yeah, no, and streaming consistently is important. And I'll say, like, I have my different, like, levels when I talk about coaching. You're like level 1. Oh, exactly, Dari, that's why I did it. Well, not fair because of Fairy Tale, but because of 777 of slot machines. I started streaming back at July 7th at 7 p.m., which is the 7th month, the 7th day, at 7 p.m. I actually did a cover of Cabaret. I did a Welcome and Bienvenue, welcome, friend, étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you, bleibe, reste, stay. Welcome and bienvenue, welcome. In cabaret, in cabaret, en cabaret. 777 pop out of monsters. Ooh. Yeah, cabaret has English, German, and French. Maybe. Honestly, the recording was really awful. I'm gonna have to do a re-recording of it at some point and get it properly, edited. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremder, étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you, bleibe, reste, stay. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. In cabaret, oh cabaret, da 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 da. Meine Damen und Herren, je suis son... No, Damen und Herren. I can't remember how to say it in French. Ladies and gentlemen. Lexi, thank you so much for the sub. It's greatly appreciated. Oh, are we? Why are the mods in a cage? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no mods in cages. Shh. Gulag with you. I am taking you away to the gulag. Ignore them. Have the ads been a lot more prevalent today than normal? Are there a lot more ads than normal today, y'all? 1 second. I don't want to get work done, but I have to get it done before tomorrow. I was watching your TikToks. Oh, that's fun. I hope you're enjoying them. I hope you're enjoying them. And I know they're only 30 seconds, but like, I'm not a fan of them. And honestly, I don't really get much money from ads. Maybe I will if there's like 1,000 people here. But right now, that's really not even worth it. If I could turn them off, I would. Maybe the hydrate. What am I hydrating with? Caffeine. Why are you pulling an all-nighter? Wait a second, don't do that. All-nighters are so bad for you. You know, if you don't do enough sleep, you will hallucinate. Name that, bats. Have you all ever hallucinated from, you know, just not sleeping enough? I had this situation where, I stayed awake for an entire week because I was studying for, finals, and I did it in a way I shouldn't have done it. I took Adderall because I was prescribed Adderall, and I did that to keep me awake. And I would go out like super late at night on one of those days with my camera because I was taking a digital photography class and I had to catch up on projects. And I made some very gorgeous pictures. I mean, if you lower the shutter speed on a camera, what it does is it keeps the lens open for longer, right? All right, thank you, Pinky. And while it stays open, it pulls in light to the receiver. And the longer it stays open, the more light it gets. And so I'd go out when it was pitch black, set up a camera, and do a long exposure shot. And I would take pictures of these shadows that you would get. And you get such weird, surreal shadows at night. When there's just enough light to make a faint imprint. But because you have this really high exposure rate, it makes these beautiful photos. Let's see if I can find one. Ooh, nope, it's gone, actually. I had some on my Facebook, but I've deleted my Facebook, so they're gone. Well, Bobby, don't do that. Your brain needs itself from lack of rest. That explains a lot. That explains a lot. Don't get enough sleep, you can die. Yeah, you can. I forget Facebook exists a lot too, and that's why I think I deleted it. It was just because, you know, it got accidentally revealed, and I'm like, oh, VTuber first, a person second. Actually, I don't think that's that far off. Because I really, you know, I don't do much outside of streaming. Content creation is my goal, my passions. Sleep deprivation is a known form of torture. That's true. That is true. I would play Peak, but I don't know if I can keep myself calm enough. We'll play Slime Rancher. Now that we've been through, wow, almost an hour of stream. Now enjoy your, I'm such a good doggy. Enjoy your therapy. Therapy's good for you. I've thought about going back. I might need to go back to therapy, honestly. No, I cannot. Good luck, though, sweetie. I'm sure somebody else will satisfy that interest for you. Oh, thank Thank you for the follow, dear Sunflower. Welcome. Welcome to the menagerie. Don't you be going around giving people autism. How dare you? It's so rude. Can't believe you're going around giving people autisms. Imagine. Imagine you could do that. Just go around and be like, you have autism now. If you could give anyone autism, who would you give it to? I am autism. Hopefully this isn't too loud. Oh, don't give me the autism. I already have the ADHD enough. I don't think I'd function too well with both. Mario, did you have nothing for me, do you? An autism denier? Are people denying autism exists? What a weird thing to deny. No, I don't think it's real. What? I just don't think autism's real. Why? It's not real, my guy. Oh, okay. Sure. Oh, I could have made a coffee this morning. Oh, I could have had a lovely coffee this morning. I found some nice instant coffee that I hadn't realized I still had. Every once in a while, I'll go to, whatchamacallit, I'll go to a local little Asian store, and they have, like, uniquely good instant coffee. I don't know why. Hey, it's just uniquely good. Is anybody eating carrots? You like those for some reason. No, you don't get those anymore. You get carrots. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the menagerie. You get the melons. I feel you, Poison. Okay. Oh, right, instant coffee. So yeah, I go to this local little Asian market. Estate? Wait, what? Wait, what? There are other people? What the heck? Oh, this isn't working. What? You should get food. You should always get food. Food's very important. Get food. So if I decide to show up, since we're already running short on time, I'll get right to it. Many states in the edge of Nibble Valley, which is only known home to the very rare Quicksilver slimes. Everything you see here is my property, which means that I alone profit from Quicksilver ports. Okay. 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 Uh, mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, I'm not sure I understand this at all, but we're gonna figure it out. You ready? Alright, find a charge station. Is this a charge station? No. I'm so confused. Is this a charge station? Oh, okay, okay. There we go. Got it. Very interesting. Where was I? Okay, this is fun. What'd you do to your toe? Don't mess up your toe, Goofy. You goofy dork. Don't you be a goofy dork now. How dare you, goofy dork? Take care of your toes. Get down with the sickness. Your mother get up. Come on, get down with the sickness. Your father get up. Your mother get up. Come on, get down with the sickness. You get up. Come on, get down with the sickness. Down with the sickness and your sister. Toes are so important. Oh, hi, Bree. You and I had similar amounts of sleep. Well done. Boop, boop, boop. Yay. Can I do it again? We'll go on this one. There you go. I understand. Oh. This is so goofy. I love this. I missed whatever that was. A little more time. Grab a little more. They're so quick. I fell. Oh no. No, no, no. No, 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 no. No. Help. Help me. Oh, that's the worst. I don't know who Stan is. Hmm? Okay, wait. How do I get out of this? There you go. Maybe. I'll take a look at it. Okay, wait, I like this. $18. Nice. Very fun. All the voidlings have bone problems. Oh, which is crazy. Y'all shouldn't have bones, honestly. Hello, Katamia. How you doing? I was going around in a circle. I went in a circle fast. I'm the best circle man. How you break your knee as a toddler? Wild. Okay, let's see what this poem is. Maybe you'll read it. Let's see. Oh, I also need to check on something real quick. I've been trying to upload something all night. All night I've been trying to upload this. Where is it? Where is it? Oh wait, no, okay, it's not on that one. Oh, finally. Oh, I've been trying to upload all of the dispatch videos onto a Google Drive so I can send it to my editor and see how much it would cost me to get it all edited into like one little video. Okay. Oh, that's not too bad. I got you. Oh, whoops. Whoops. When my button slips. Give me a second, let me strip down. Okay. Okay. There it is. I think of you when sunlight on the ocean glimmers at noon. I think of you when shimmers in the river mirror the moon. I see you in the rise of the dust that covers the distant ridge, in each deep midnight where the wanderer quivers on the high bridge. I hear you in the low and muffled rustle of rolling seas. I often go to quiet groves and listen to things at peace. I am with you, however far you are. I know you're near. love as sun gives way to star to have you here. There you go. Kami has a bone mountain, excuse me. Excuse me? What do you mean Katamiya has a bone mountain? Katamiya. No. You cannot have a bone mountain. Do you not know how bad that is? So that's not good. Katamiya. Not take people's bones. Thank you for the follow, sweetie. Oh, hail Katamiya of the Bone Mountain. You, my lovely little wet plorts, haven't made me anything for the longest time. Why haven't you made me anything? Give me some more wet. Give me some more wet plorts. Where are my plorts? You. What are you doing? Oh, they were asleep. They sleep in a pile? That's so cute. Alright, we're gonna see if we can do a little bit of a purchase. Thank you for the hydrate. Thank you. There's my explodey boys. Bunch of idiots is what they are. Pogo fruit. Okay, we must kill the old and the infirm. Rest of you will be good. Alright. Do they die when they explode? No, they just explode. They just be doing that sometimes, you know? Do I know why? Not a clue. They just be doing that. I suppose I would also just be doing that. Give me the option. Oh. Slimepedia. Slimes. What do you prefer? Oh, you like the odd onion. That's why I'm growing odd onions. You get odd onions. What do you like? Oh, your favorite's a Q-berry. Good thing I'm already feeding you the Q-berry. Oh, whoops. And you. Taking all of these. You only get odd onions now. What about you? What do you like? No, you just get carrots. Sorry. Oh, look at this. Okay, this is interesting. So the odd onion is an offshoot of the carrot. Meaning we'll get carrots. We only get a few odd onions. That's why we need to be a little bit more choosy with who gets odd onions. Very interesting. This is Slime Rancher, yes. Yes. We be ranching slimes. Alright, now is the goal, is to find out the next giant slime to murder. I don't know where the next giant slime could be, but we need to kill a giant slime. Which is so funny to me. Like, why? Okay, that one's been done. I think I went over here, but I needed a key, right? I'm glad you're going to your appointment now. Oh. What should be clipping? Should I do that? I could always add a poetry read. No, I don't want to become known as the poetry VTuber. I like poetry, but I was thinking, like, what if I do a poetry read every morning and post it on, like, TikTok? But that's not the audience I want to build. I do like doing poetry, don't get me wrong. If I do a post every day, then is that. That's what I'm going to be known for. And you have to be consistent with your branding. Welcome to the world of entertainment, y'all. Could do one occasionally, yeah. It's annoying sometimes. That's why maybe I'll just make a separate poetry reading channel. Oh no, cut me. No, Sarah, you're fine. I was thinking personally, you can post whatever you want. I was thinking exclusively for the fact of, if I'm gonna make, like, my own, like, stuff, right? And if I'm gonna, like, start, like, posting things regularly, like, I like doing poetry, and I could easily do a poetry every morning. It'd be very easy for me, and I would enjoy doing it. But it would not be, like, good for me to post it, because it doesn't, like, apply with my branding right now. You know, I'm just thinking out loud about development. You're fine. There's nothing to be sorry for. I like the poetry a lot. It's one of those things that I think about all the time, because, like, and if you notice, even, like, things of what's her name? Billie Eilish. She has a, Instagram that she doesn't claim that is, there we go. I can't. She does reviewing fries. She has an Instagram reviewing fries, but it's not attached to her normal accounts. Who knows? Maybe. I haven't really been paying much attention. Lou Drift Rally. Roaming. And I need to get more chickens so I can feed the fat cat. I wonder if this is enough chickens to kill the cat. I'm gonna take all the roosters. That should be enough roosters for now. Just so irritating having to worry about branding all the time. But you can't just do random stuff. Maybe I think I might make a separate poetry channel. I think it'd be nice. Not streaming, because I'm still gonna read poetry on stream. I like doing that. But I might make a specific... Eat the concept of bragging, that'd be nice. I might make a TikTok that is just reading poetry. Do one poetry a day. Hey, we got Tiger. Yay. I think I was also thinking of like it would be nice because then, you know, I'd have one less thing I need to post every day. Anyways, enough thinking about branding. See your problems to go away. They're not even a problem, it's just like, I mean, I have to understand. I hate that I understand it, and I have to understand it, that if I post stuff about being a villain and all that stuff. Thank you for the follow, Fuss. The people are gonna come to me for that, right? And if I don't post that, then they'll just be like, oh, what? Okay, I mean, is it still stuff, but like, I'm not as interested in this. And then you have less people who will come by consistently, and then you lose out on viewership. Branding becomes harder. And then suddenly you have 10,000 plus followers, and not a single one of them is there for the same thing, so nothing gets good reach, and then the algorithm hates you, and oh, I'm glad. Hello, Voss. Which reel? And see, there's a problem. Didn't even think about it. People see my reels, I never know which reel they came in for. And I have to guess, was it one of the sweet talking ones? Was it one of the ones where I tell you to sit and behave? Womp womp. Womp womp, Gene, womp womp. I can get more chickens later. Oh, and Sarah, there's nothing for you to consider here. Honestly, if you quit listening to me halfway through, that would have been fine too. I'm just yapping. I thought so. Which no one has, by the way. Not a single one of those has gotten close to doubling. Maybe eventually. And see, they could have had me say all sorts of things. But they didn't. Eat all my chickens. Yeah, I hope you don't take it at all personal, Sarah. I'm more of just yapping. I'm putting my thoughts out there in the wild. Void things can't coordinate. It's true. It's true. Gas my socials. While killing all the chickens didn't help. Thank you for the follow, Sacred. You can count to 20. It's very impressive, honestly. I'm so impressed y'all made it that high. I didn't think you could do it, but you did. So good for you. I don't want to make Twitter. Yeah, and you got 10 stickers. Yeah, see, y'all can do stuff. So proud of you. Alright, let's see if we can make the fat cat explode. Cat, I need you to blow up. Dang. I imagine the voidlings are like these slimes sometimes. Hopping off into the ocean. Being your goofy little selves. Y'all, people got so excited about the sticker post. I don't know what it was. But there are so many, like, views and likes on that post. Good morning, Safi. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the menagerie. Oh, it's not even like a relevancy thing. The reason why you want to do Twitter is a high Twitter following proves that you have good standing in the community and that you can get other people involved who are VTubers. So it's good to prove that your sustainability in the field. Brands care about it more. And if you do it well, you only talk about things that are, I mean, it's a pain, y'all. Hi, Safi McCyphers. Which video are you from? Slimes remind you of Digimon. Oh, I love Digimon. Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to make money. Explode. Ugh. Favorite slime. I like the normal slimes, the little, not the pink ones, but like small ones, you know? I don't like the big slimes. I like the little, oh no, water slime, water slime, water slime, water slime, water slime. I love the water slime. Water slime's my favorite. Without a doubt. Water slime. It's so cute. The water boys are gooey, really gooey and lovely. They are objectively the best. And you can't prove me wrong. Right now you can try all you want. Can't prove me wrong. Favorite Digimon? Oh, I used to like Skull Greymon a lot. Even though its evolution was awful. Blow up, blow up, blow up, blow up. Yes. I think I liked all the Gurugamon ones as well. I liked the Greymon, the Gurugamon. I liked, oh wait, what was the one with the guns? I love the one that's the stupid little rabbit with guns. Oh, this is a new area. Oh, she's so pretty. Oh, what is this? Why are you so pretty? Did you not do your homework? You didn't do your homework. Mimi. Can't believe you didn't do your homework. I'm telling on you. Chat, somebody go tell on Mimi. You didn't submit the homework. I can't believe you didn't submit the homework. Naughty, naughty. Probably do it on Thursday. I think Thursday is a good day for it. I gotta make a scene. Yeah, Beamy, I'm taking off points from your report card. The best grade you can get now is like an A. You can't even get an A plus anymore. What is this? What's that? What's that? Wait. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the menagerie. This is where you go. Oh, it loops back around. That's so cool. I want an A plus. Fine. I'll send you the homework later. You can do. No stickers for you. You'll do extra credit. Whoa. is no extra credit. So many Q-berries. Oh. I guess it's time to start depositing some of these. How are you doing on the luminosity crystals? 21, that's not bad. Or phosphorus crystals. 1 second. I should really upgrade my storage. Aye, thank you for the tier 1 broken. Really do appreciate it. I'm your timer for hair dye? Okay. Go. Well, how much time do you have? That's not pretty cheap, actually. Alright, go. I'm not even going to be streaming for a whole hour, though. I'll only be streaming for another half an hour. This Slime Retro one, yes. Two has bunnies. Ooh, I want bunnies. Chat, I'm not your hyperfixation, am I? I'm not your hyperfixation, am I? What if you lose your hyperfixation? Suddenly you're not going to enjoy my streams anymore. Ouch. Ouch. Oh, my feelings. Chat's gonna forget all about me. And I cry, and I cry, cry. I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get me no girly action. I won't forget anybody. But chat will forget about me. They've restarted. As long as there's dopamine. As long as there's dopamine. Why don't you make any water plots for me anymore? Why do you hate me? That's fair. 74 streams, what the heck? What do you mean, 74 streams? Oh, what? What? Oh, Necro. I will have endless lore for you, though. Up to you, Nixie. I personally won't, so... You do you, sweetie. Oh, there is whole arcs and everything. There's a period where Jean becomes a vigilante. There's the first Voidling to hit Ace. Which there's one of two ways it can go right now. Maybe I'll do a vote. Maybe I'll do a vote. That's what I'll do. Okay. Here's what the vote's gonna be. You ready? And is the first Voidling Ace going to be a hero or a villain? Because they will be both working for Jean. Remember, hero and villain more refers to powers than it does what the person is. It's going to be amazing. But there will be a vote for it, so you don't have to worry about it yet. Which I need to talk to the lovely Aiko about. Vigilante Gene. Mm-hmm. There are whole arcs planned. If only I could get myself a golden one. I'm excited. I'm excited for all of it. It's gonna be great. And sad. And happy. And sad. Well, I'll just put it this way. Based on what you pick, we'll decide how tragic. Wait, what do you mean give him more water? Do I have to get more water from somewhere else? Are there too many that they're just drinking up all the water? What do you want? Chicken. That's a slime. That's a slime. What the heck? Chicken. Give me chicken. That is 3 slimes of chicken. Slime man, 1 chicken. I mean, totally real adult man, human boy. 1 of a chicken. Oh. Slime McReal dude. Oh, 100%. There will be Detective-y junk. There will be Detective-y shenanigan. 1 whole Detective-y shenanigan. There'll be friendship. There'll be a whole situation where, you know, it goes into a thing and there's he has friends and he has a whole thing between both heroes and villains. Because he has faith and wants to make the world better sometimes. Yes. Oh, and Aiko had this amazing idea. Going off of my TikTok from last night. I don't want to set the world on fire. Welcome to the other side. What's this? Ooh. Shiny. What's this? Space dandy. He's a dandy man in space. Oh, we love friends. Friends give you the perfect fuel for emotional growth. What's this? What's this? There's white stuff in the air. What are you? Come here. No, no. You're mine. You live with me now. We're gonna have soft tacos later. Brian. That's not the right music. 1 second. There it is. What do you mean there's other areas? Oh, hey. I'm looking forward to the first voidling. Oh, we'll have to have a vote on that too, won't we? The first voidling. What will it be? Honey slime. David Lark. Yes. Technically, Gina's the only one who can make voidlings. Technically. You're a pet introvert? Very nice. Congratulations. I mean, I said Gene pulls them out of the void. I never said he makes them. Don't you frog blank at me, except being a pet. Oh, who's a good little introvert? Who's a good little introvert? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Thank you. Who's a good little introvert? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Oh, look at you with your little hobbies. I bet you have all sorts of fun things you like to do. I bet you get super excited about talking about your little fun hobbies, don't you? Adorable. Hey, how do you know? How do you think I can know everything to say properly about introvert, huh? I know. I know what I am. I know what I am, but what are you? I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever I say sticks to you. No, that's not right. I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. Oh, look at you getting all excited about your hobbies, you little neurodivergent. Oh, I bet you just want to tell me all about all the things you enjoy, don't you? Maybe that, Beth. You'd probably write a book on your favorite hobby, couldn't you? Stands up straight. No, you can't write a book on it, because that would take too much attention and focus. But you could definitely talk enough to fill up a book. Oh, but I want to know about sailing. God, me. When was the last time you went sailing? Would you go sailing with me? I'm lost. Hello, Wei. How you doing? Welcome. Glad you made it. Oh. Get eaten. I've been bullying all the introverted. Oh, you would too. You would too. Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy for the love of you. It won't be I haven't got a carrot, but you'd look sweet upon the sea. A bicycle man for two. I'm an introvert, that's why I can bully you so effectively. That's valid. Why did 14-year-old... Oh. My honey is different now. Crazy. What do you think honey slimes eat? I'm putting the honey slimes in a cave. This is where they live now. Gorgeous. Oh, I should put... Okay, wait a second. Wait, brain. I'm so smart. Wrong way. I don't have enough. But you look sweet upon the... Alright, where's the auto feeder? Okay. So this is a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. So this is a theory I have. Right? What if I take all of these little solar boys, we're just to test it out. We put them in the dark. But they just instantly survive down here because it's dark. Right. I'm not crazy, am I? You live here now. Oh, right, they fly. Crazy, crazy, crazy for being so lonely. I love the song. Hello, Hagimoto. How you doing? Crazy, crazy for feeling so lonely. 14 minutes. I love coffee, I love tea, I love Java Java and it loves me. Coffee, tea, and my dove and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Soybean, green bean, cabbage and green. I'm not keen upon a bean unless it is a jitty jitty bean, boy. I love coffee, I love tea, I love Java Java and it loves me. Coffee, tea, and Java and me. It's lovely to see you. I hope you're doing well. I always give huggable energy. This might surprise you, but I'm very huggable. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the menagerie. I lost all ambition for worldly acclaim. I just wanna be the one you love. Of course you can hug me. I'll happily hug anybody. Oh, Peach is skimming to the stone. He's chopping up all the women's meat. You're backing and whacking and smacking. You're backing, whacking and smacking. Backing and whacking and smacking. Back, whack, jobbing at me. Do 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 do. Why intimidated? Don't ever be intimidated. They don't need to be intimidated around me. I'm so unintimidating. There it is. Thank you for the follow. Always appreciated. Up we go. There it is. Nice. I got distracted there for a little while. What were we doing? I was singing, wasn't I? I had some more songs to sing. They say Slime Game. I love Slime Game. Slime Game is a good game. There we go. Fly me to the another one. Looking for a slow field. Is that a slow field? Static clinger. Oh, interesting. Oh, very nice. When did Katamia become a fae? Give this to you for your bones. Give me your bones. I need your bones for soup. You don't need bones. Why would you need bones? Give me bones. Give me your bones. I keep your bones. Keep your bones safe. Your bones can't be taken if I take them. Safe bones. Don't you want safe bones? You want your bones to be safe, don't you? Give me your bones. No. I trapped you. I caught you in a cage of iron. Why do you think I have the bars? Is to trap the fae. I've always only been concerned about the fae. No, I didn't. And what's my name? That's why VTubers exist, actually. We're afraid of the fae. There we go. I got plorts. Exactly, you have parts of names. And I'll never give you the full. Harry Copperfield Dresden. My plorts. Alright, we're gonna finish these off. Alright, lovelies. We're coming up to an end here. I need to get my computer ready so I can get my work going, and work doesn't go, Gene, why did you clock in late? What do you mean you're a VTuber? So, we have to go find somebody. We're gonna go to Twitch. I can't believe you're not streaming. Oh, Hoshi's doing ASMR. Heck yeah. We're rating Hoshi. Hoshi. Na 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 na. Alright, lovelies. We're gonna do the, can you pull up the proper raid message for me, Karamiya? I don't remember what the command is. No, 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 no. There it is. Copy that EP raid. I appreciate you all so very much. Say hi to Hoshi. I'm not gonna be able to stick around, but bye, lovelies. Sinful.